When the newly married Lady Louisa took charge of the Castletown estate in 1759, at the tender age of 16, she took over the care of a landscape which had a history going back longer than historical records did. Lady Louisa probably wasn't aware of the Bronze Age burial site that was inches under the surface of her front lawn, but the plaque now in situ there reminds us of the fact that this site has been important to local people for thousands of years. The Castletown domain was the part of the Conolly lands which directly supported the house and the family who lived in it. It provided their food, which came from the kitchen gardens, from an orchard, fish from the lake and the river, and later Louisa's farmyard and dairy provided goods like milk and butter, which was apparently better than the butter at Carton. Pork came from the piggeries, and of course venison from the deer parks. The on-site brewery produced their ale, the forest provided fuel, and it also contained the family's gardens, and most importantly for the purposes of this talk, their recreation space. In 1588, the domain contained a castle, 500 acres, a fine house, a garden of pleasure, an orchard, woods, and a hop yard. Little is known of the interventions made from them up to the time of the Conollies, but it's clear from early maps that the parklands changed dramatically from the 1730s into the early 19th century, and the majority of what we see today was envisioned, masterminded, and executed by our own Lady Louisa. Louisa's predecessor, Catherine's landscape, was in line with the formality of the architecture of the house. The formal landscape had axes and avenues which fanned out from the house to the edges of the domain, each leading to a point of interest. Gardens were terraced, laid out in straight lines, and formally planted to illustrate an order being put on nature. Just as her interventions were in the house, Louisa's interventions in the landscape were entirely romantic in nature. She embarked on the creation of a Brownian style landscape, a sculpted natural landscape which appealed to all of the senses. She wanted a place that was pleasant to walk in, a place to escape the hustle and bustle of the main house, and a place where people could delight in nature. Gone were the formal beds and straight avenues, and in were clumped planting of trees, sweeping curved walks along water features, which intermittently revealed surprise points of interest, such as a temple, a view of a ruin, or a quaint little Gothic lodge. Everywhere was carefully thought planting, the Batty Langley Lodge being surrounded by fragrant flowers. The planting made possible by the ha-has, which ensured that errant cattle didn't get in and eat all of the lovely plants. The heavier landscaping, which Louisa also directed, involved diverting the Crowdon stream under where the present farmyard is, and the building of a dam in order to create a series of cascades down to the River Liffey. Sound was important here. The sound of running water, a recurrent theme in Louisa's landscape designs. She created two walks along the Liffey, the upper Liffey walk giving a view of the house, and the lower, which was once a public roadway, gave views of the Liffey, Dunnacumper, and the ruins of St. Wulstan's. These walks were ornamented by buildings and the points of interest such as the temple, named Mrs. Siddons Temple, in honour of Louisa's favourite actress, the bathing house, which was functional as well as aesthetic, the ice house, and the Gothic facade of Batty Langley. On the other end of the estate, where the avenue brought Celbridge into the Castletown domain, Louisa located the buildings intended for the use of the local people. The school, the church, and the church maintained by her at the local gates. One of my favourite quotes from Louisa's correspondence, where she writes of the parklands, is one from a letter to her sister Sarah, written in the summer of 1779. It says, "Our weather is now charming again, and nobody can be busier than I am by the riverside, which I do think will be beautiful. The pond is turned into a river, and 3 cascades made in a cut that is carried down to the river, which is very pretty. You cannot conceive how much I divert myself here." I think Louisa will be very pleased to know that 200 years later, her creation still allows people a place to divert themselves, a place to be around nature, to be enchanted by all of the senses, and a place to be at peace. And that is Lady Louisa's legacy.